I'll never forget the night I heard my grandson whisper, "Don't tell Grandma I can't breathe. She'll panic." Those words cut through the darkness of my Miami apartment like a knife, sharp enough to slice right through 82 years of strength I thought I still had left. It was 1:14 a.m., the kind of humid Florida night where the air hangs heavy and warm, even with the old AC rattling like it's begging for retirement. I'd gotten up because my hip was nagging me again, the same way it had nagged me every night since the hurricane of '92. I shuffled down the hallway in my soft house shoes, the fabric worn thin from 20 years of pacing the same floors in Coconut Grove. That's when I heard the whispering behind Lucas's door. His voice was tight, shaky, not the easy, warm tone he usually had. And it wasn't alone. There was another boy in there. His best friend Marcus, I realized from the tone. "Try again," Marcus whispered back, panic layered in every syllable. "Just slow your breathing. You're freaking me out, man." "I can't," Lucas rasped. "It hurts. Don't wake her up. Please don't." I froze, my hand still gripping the hallway wall. I'm old, but not deaf, and certainly not naive. At first, my mind went to the worst place possible. Drugs, asthma attack, something stupid teenage boys do at 2 a.m. But then I heard a sound that wiped out every other thought. A wheeze. A long, sharp, dragging intake of air, like someone trying to drag oxygen through a straw. My heart lurched. I stepped closer, my hand shaking as I reached for the doorknob. He had been coughing for weeks, a dry, hollow kind that didn't match any cold I'd ever heard. He'd been tired, pale, eating less, pulling those hoodies tight around him even on warm days. I asked and asked what was wrong, but teenagers lie with the kind of confidence only fear can teach. "I'm fine, Grandma," he'd said over and over. But nothing about that sound behind the door was fine. Marcus whispered again, "You need to tell her, dude. This is bad." "No," Lucas gasped. "She'll freak out. It'll kill her." That broke me. Not the pain in his voice, though that hurt like hell, but the idea that my boy thought he needed to protect me from his suffering, that he thought he should choke in the dark rather than let me worry. I pushed the door open. The two boys jumped like I'd fired a gun. The room smelled faintly of sweat, and that metallic tang only sickness leaves behind. Lucas was hunched over on his bed, one hand gripping his chest, his face drained of color, his lips tinged slightly blue, his eyes wet with panic. "Grandma," he tried to say, but the rest dissolved into another wheeze, the kind that rattles down into the bones. I walked straight to him, ignoring Marcus's wide eyes. "Baby, how long has this been happening?" I asked, keeping my voice steady even though my insides were shaking like a loose ceiling fan in a Florida storm. He tried to answer but only managed another wheeze, deeper this time. His chest struggled visibly, muscles pulling in ways no breathing should. That's when I saw it, the slight swelling under his loose t-shirt, the faint bruise-like shadows blooming around his ribs, the trembling in his hands, the fear in his eyes. Something was killing him slowly, and he'd been hiding it. I touched his forehead, burning like a fever that had set up camp long before I walked in. Marcus stood up abruptly, voice cracking. "Mrs. Alvarez." I tried to tell him we should wake you up, but he said, "I know," I said softly. "Go home, sweetheart. I've got him." He hesitated, torn between guilt and fear, before grabbing his backpack and slipping out the door. Lucas looked like he wanted to protest, but he didn't have enough air to argue. I lifted his chin gently. "Look at me, baby." His big brown eyes met mine. He was 17 years old, but looked suddenly younger than the day he came home from the hospital as a newborn. "You don't have to hide anything from me. Not anymore. Not ever." He swallowed hard. "I'm scared, Grandma," he whispered, voice so faint it nearly vanished. I cupped his cheek. "Good. Only fools aren't scared. Now breathe slow for me. We're going to the hospital." "No," he rasped, eyes widening in panic. "I don't want—" "It doesn't matter what you want," I said gently but firmly. "It matters what you need." He tried to stand, but his knees buckled, and I grabbed him under the arms with strength I didn't know I still had. His breath hitched again, another wheeze breaking through the silence. Something deep inside me snapped into place. Not fear, not panic, but the steely instinct of every grandmother who ever lived. I was going to save him. or I was going to die trying. I grabbed my purse, my car keys, and wrapped my arm around his waist. His weight sagged against me as we moved slowly down the hallway. He clung to me, trembling, breathing shallow and fast. "Grandma," he whispered. "Yes, baby? If something happens to me, nothing is happening to you tonight," I said sharply, my throat tight. "You hear me? Nothing." We made it to the car with me half carrying him. The warm Miami night wrapped around us like a blanket heavy with fear. I got him into the passenger seat, buckled him in, cranked the AC even though I was shaking too hard to feel it. His head leaned back, eyes half-lidded. He whispered again, "Grandma, it hurts." I brushed his hair back. "I know, honey. I'm right here." When I pulled out of the parking lot, every fear in the world crawled into the back seat with us. The drive to Jackson Memorial had never felt so long. The traffic lights never so slow. The world outside never so indifferent to the crisis happening inside my rusted old Toyota. Halfway there, his breathing changed. Shallower, shorter, faster. I reached over and grabbed his hand. "Stay with me," I whispered. His fingers squeezed weakly. "Don't let go," he rasped. "I won't," I promised. "Not ever." I didn't know then that the secret illness killing him had been growing for months. I didn't know what he'd been hiding. I didn't know how close I was to losing him. But I knew one thing. That night was going to change everything. The automatic doors at Jackson Memorial slid open just as I pulled up to the emergency entrance, my hazard lights blinking wildly against the night. I jumped out before the engine even stopped shaking, ran around to the passenger side, and pulled the door open. Lucas slumped toward me, his breath catching in his throat like each inhale was fighting through barbed wire. His skin had turned the pale, waxy shade I'd seen only once before, on my husband, the night he took his final breath. My stomach twisted at the memory, but I shoved it down. This was not the time to fall apart. "Help!" I shouted, my voice rising higher than I intended. "Please, someone help him!" 2 nurses rushed out with a wheelchair. One was young, barely older than Lucas, with wide eyes and a ponytail swinging behind her. The other was older, the kind of woman who had seen every kind of emergency in her years working night shifts. She reached us first. "What's happening?" she asked sharply as she helped me lift him from the seat. "He can't breathe," I said, trying to keep calm even as my voice cracked. "It started weeks ago, but tonight it got so much worse." Lucas was barely conscious, his head lolling weakly as the nurses settled him into the wheelchair. "Hurts," he whispered, one hand curling over his ribs. "Grandma." "I'm right here," I said quickly, gripping his shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." The older nurse pushed the chair toward the entrance. "Let's move," she commanded. "Vitals first. Trauma room 4. They whisked him inside, and I hurried behind them, my old legs moving faster than they had in years. The bright white lights of the ER felt too harsh, too loud, too cold. Nurses and doctors flowed around us like a storm. Scrubs, gloves, carts, monitors, wires. I barely heard half of what they said, but certain words stabbed into my chest. Respiratory failure, oxygen saturation, fever, elevated heart rate. A doctor with short hair and alert eyes stepped into the room. "I'm Dr. Hughes," she said quickly. "Tell me everything." "He's been coughing," I said, trying to keep my mind clear. "For weeks. He said it was just allergies, but then he got tired, pale. He started losing weight. And tonight, he couldn't breathe." "Any chest pain?" she asked. "Yes," I said, nodding rapidly. "He grabbed his ribs, and he wheezed so deep it sounded like it came from his bones." "Any known medical conditions?" "No," I answered automatically, then hesitated. Not that he's told me." Dr. Hughes looked at me with an expression that told me she heard the truth buried in those words. Teenagers hide things, especially when they're terrified. "Start him on oxygen," she told a nurse. "Get chest x-ray, CBC, blood gas, EKG, and start an IV." Lucas's head rolled slightly when they slipped the oxygen mask over his face. "Grandma," he breathed out, fogging the plastic. "I'm here, baby," I whispered, brushing his hair back. "You're doing so good. Just breathe for me." The pulse oximeter beeped too fast. The heart monitor spiked. The nurses moved quickly, practiced, efficient. They lifted his shirt to attach the EKG leads and gasped softly when his ribs showed more bruises I had never seen. The older nurse looked at me. "Has he fallen?" "No," I whispered. "At least, he didn't tell me." The look she gave me was gentle but heavy with something I didn't want to consider. Not yet. Not on top of everything else. The portable X-ray machine rolled in, humming as they positioned it over him. I stepped back, hugging myself, feeling useless and cold, even under the Miami heat. The minutes stretched like rubber bands ready to snap. Then a soft crackle of static sounded as the X-ray developed. Dr. Hughes stared at the screen. Her expression changed. Not panic, not relief, but something darker. Something controlled, measured, but unmistakably serious. She walked toward me. "Mrs. Alvarez," she began carefully, "your grandson's lungs are filled with fluid." My breath caught. "Fluid? Like pneumonia?" "Yes," she said, "but very advanced. And there's more." She hesitated. "It looks like this has been developing for a long time. Weeks, maybe months." I covered my mouth with my hand. "We also see unusual scarring," she continued. "It could be from repeated infections, or something he's been exposed to, or—" She paused again, lowering her voice. "Or an underlying illness he hasn't been diagnosed with." I felt the ground tilt under me. "But he never said anything," I whispered. "Why would he hide something like that?" She looked toward Lucas, who lay motionless except for the shallow rise and fall of his chest under the oxygen mask. "Fear," she said softly. "Kids hide things when they're scared." The ER doors opened, and a respiratory therapist entered with a specialized machine. "Doctor," he said, "he's dropping again. O2 is down to 82%, even with high flow." "All right," Dr. Hughes said. "Let's prep him." "Prep him for what?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. For the possibility that he may not be able to breathe on his own much longer. My heart stopped. No, not again. Not my grandson. Not the only person left who calls me Grandma with that tender mix of love and mischief. They switched his mask to a stronger one, the kind that forces air into the lungs. He gagged slightly at the pressure, chest fighting against the new rhythm. I rushed to his side, holding his hand. He squeezed weakly and opened his eyes just a sliver. "Don't cry," he whispered. "I'm not," I lied, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Grandma," he rasped, struggling for breath. "There's something I need to tell you." But another wave of coughing overtook him, deep and violent, shaking his entire body. The monitors spiked. Nurses rushed back in. "Grandma," he choked out between coughs, "I didn't want you to know." "To know what?" I whispered desperately. He looked at me, eyes full of pain and fear and something even worse, regret. "I've been sick," he whispered, voice trembling like a fragile thread. "For a long time." Another cough exploded through him, and he doubled over, gasping. "But I didn't want to scare you." My chest shattered into pieces. "Oh, baby," I whispered, touching his cheek. "You should have told me. You should have told me everything." He closed his eyes as another wave of coughing hit, and I could feel each one like a punch in my own ribs. The nurse looked at me with urgency. "Ma'am, we need space." "No," I said softly, gripping his hand tighter. "I'm not leaving him." "You can stay," Dr. Hughes said, "but you need to stand back." I nodded and stepped just 1 foot away, far enough to let them work, close enough for him to feel me there. They adjusted the machine again. Then, his entire body jolted. The monitor shrieked. The nurse shouted, "He's crashing!" And I felt my soul leave my body. The monitor's alarm pierced the room, a shrill, violent sound that froze every drop of blood in my veins. The nurses moved so fast they blurred, pushing equipment closer, adjusting tubes, calling out numbers I couldn't process. Lucas's body twitched as he tried desperately to suck in air that simply wasn't moving through his lungs anymore. His chest rose only halfway with every attempt, his ribs pulling inward sharply like his body was collapsing around itself. "BP dropping," a nurse yelled. "Heart rate irregular." "We need to intubate," another said. The world shrank to the size of that small hospital room under fluorescent lights, and every sound became muffled except the frantic beeping of the machines. I saw a nurse reach for the crash cart. Another pulled open a drawer of sterile tools. Dr. Hughes grabbed gloves, and moved to Lucas's side with the calm urgency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But even she looked tense. Lucas's eyes fluttered open, wide with panic, as he clawed weakly at the oxygen mask, like he was drowning. His chest heaved, barely lifting. He grabbed at the air, fingers trembling. I took his hand instantly. "Grandma," he choked, voice barely a thread. "Don't leave." "I'm here," I said, my throat burning. "I'm right here, baby." His hand squeezed mine once, weak, but still there, before his eyes rolled slightly and he slumped backward. My heart stopped. "Lucas," I cried. "Ma'am, step back," a nurse ordered sharply. "I can't." "Step back now," Dr. Hughes said firmly without looking at me. "Let us save him." I backed against the wall, shaking so badly I could hardly stand. My fingers dug into the cold tile as they pulled off the oxygen mask and repositioned his head. His skin was so pale it looked translucent under the lights. "Prepare the laryngoscope," Dr. Hughes said. A nurse handed her the tool. Another held Lucas's chin. Another pushed medication into his IV. His chest moved even less now, rising only a fraction, as if each breath was an unbearable weight he could no longer lift. "Heart rate down to 62, someone called out. "Come on, kid," another whispered under her breath. "Don't do this." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the machines away. I wanted to crawl onto the bed and breathe for him if I had to. But all I could do was press my hand over my mouth as tears streamed down my face in hot, helpless rivers. "Doctor." Hughes inserted the scope, her eyes locked in fierce concentration. "I've got the airway," she said tensely. "Tube now." A nurse handed her the endotracheal tube, and she guided it carefully down his throat. His chest jolted slightly, but he didn't wake. He didn't move at all, except when the nurses shifted him. "Tube placement confirmed," the respiratory therapist said after checking the monitor. "Hooking up the ventilator." A machine was rolled closer and connected to the tube. A hiss filled the room, the sound of a machine breathing for my grandson. I gripped the edge of the counter, my vision swimming. I'd heard that sound before, years ago, the night my husband lay dying. The same mechanical rhythm, the same fight between a body giving up and medicine trying to keep it alive. But this room was brighter. Lucas was younger. He had a future. He had so much life left to live. He couldn't die. Not here. Not like this. "Stabilizing," someone said. "BP rising. Oxygenation improving." The beeping slowed. The chaos settled. Nurses began stepping back, one by one. The respiratory therapist stayed, adjusting ventilator settings. Dr. Hughes removed her gloves and exhaled deeply, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Only then did she turn to me. "He's stable," she said quietly. "For now." Those two final words sliced through me. For now. I moved toward the bed, my legs trembling with every step. Lucas lay still, his chest rising and falling in perfect mechanical rhythm with the ventilator. His eyelashes were damp. His hair stuck to his forehead. A faint line of saliva trailed from the corner of his mouth from when they placed the tube. I reached out and touched his hand gently. It twitched, just a tiny movement, but it was enough to break me open completely. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me you were this sick?" A tear slid down his cheek, even though he didn't open his eyes. The machines hummed softly, a cruel lullaby. Nurses lowered the lights and left the room to let him rest, their shoes squeaking softly as they slipped out one by one. When the door clicked shut, the silence in the room felt heavier than any storm outside. I slid into the chair beside his bed and held his hand with both of mine, memorizing the warmth of it. "I should have known," I whispered. "I should have seen it sooner. I'm so sorry, baby." The ventilator hissed in response, steady and cold. Hours passed like shadows across the walls. Nurses came in and out, checking vitals, adjusting settings, whispering updates. I barely heard them. I just watched Lucas breathe. At some point, maybe around dawn, Dr. Hughes came in again. She pulled up a stool and sat beside me with a kind of weary compassion etched into her face. "We need to run more tests," she said softly. "There's something underlying this. Something he's been hiding." "I know," I whispered. "Do you have any idea what it might be?" I shook my head slowly. "No, but He said he'd been sick for a long time. She nodded. That matches what we're seeing. Repeated infections, lung scarring, fluid buildup. It didn't happen overnight. My heart clenched. What happens now? I asked. She looked through the glass wall to where Lucas lay motionless. We find out what he's been hiding, she said softly. And we hope, she added, almost like a prayer, that he wasn't hiding it for too long. I looked at my grandson, tubes snaking across his chest, machines doing the work his body couldn't. And I knew that whatever the truth was, it was only just beginning. The hours after sunrise felt both endless and fleeting, like time was slipping through my fingers while I sat frozen beside Lucas's bed. The ventilator hissed steadily, each mechanical breath a reminder that he couldn't take one on his own. His eyelids fluttered occasionally, a soft tremor, but he never woke. His skin looked pale against the hospital sheets, and every time his chest rose with the machine, my own heart tightened. A nurse with gentle hands and tired eyes came in to adjust the IV lines. He's holding stable, she murmured softly, almost like she didn't want to disturb the quiet grief hanging in the air. His vitals aren't getting worse, that's something. Something. The smallest word with the biggest weight. I watched her check his pupils with a small flashlight, her movements precise and calm. She brushed his hair back just like I'd done 1,000 times. He's young, she added. That's his advantage. I nodded, though my throat was too tight to speak. She gave me a sympathetic half-smile before slipping out of the room, leaving me alone again with the faint hum of machines. The morning sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow across the floor. It would have been a beautiful Miami day if my entire world weren't falling apart inside this room. For a moment, I imagined Lucas on a normal morning, rushing around looking for his backpack, eating cereal too fast, yelling from the hallway, asking if I'd seen his headphones. The simple chaos of teenage life. That felt like another lifetime now. Around mid-morning, the door opened again, and a young doctor with brown hair pulled into a neat bun stepped inside. She looked calm, but carried the kind of seriousness that made my stomach drop. "Mrs. Alvarez?" she asked gently. "I'm Dr. Carter. I'm one of the specialists reviewing your grandson's tests." I swallowed hard. "Do you know what's wrong with him?" She drew in a slow breath, glancing at Lucas before turning back to me. "We have some results, but we're waiting on a few more." Still, we're beginning to form a picture. A cold chill ran down my spine. "Tell me." She pulled a chair beside me and sat, her voice soft but firm. "His lungs are full of fluid, which we expected from the X-ray. But there's something else. His blood work shows chronic inflammation. His oxygen levels have been dropping for months, not days." I pressed a hand to my mouth. "Months. He's been fighting something silently for a long time," she said. "And whatever it is, it's serious." My eyes burned, but the tears refused to fall. Not yet. Not until she finished. "Mrs. Alvarez," she continued carefully, "has Lucas ever talked to you about chest pain, fatigue, recurring fevers, night sweats, or trouble exercising?" My heart sank with every symptom she listed. I saw flashes of memories. Him resting after climbing the stairs, stopping halfway down the block to catch his breath, brushing off dizziness, skipping meals because he wasn't hungry, coming home pale and sweating. "Yes," I whispered hoarsely. "All of that. But he said it was stress, homework, growing pains." She exhaled slowly, her eyes softening. Teenagers hide symptoms, especially when they're afraid. I looked at Lucas, his still body, his parted lips around the breathing tube, the tape holding it in place. His chest rose and fell to the rhythm of the machine keeping him alive. "He didn't want to scare me," I whispered. Dr. Carter nodded. "We see that a lot, but hiding symptoms can be dangerous." I felt my heart twist painfully. Is it too late?" She hesitated, glancing at the monitor. "He's in critical condition, but he's responding to the ventilator, and that gives us time to fight whatever is causing this." Time. A fragile gift. She stood, smoothing her coat. "We'll know more once the advanced tests return. I'll come back as soon as we have answers." I nodded weakly as she left the room. The hours crawled by. Nurses checked his vitals, adjusted his medications, whispered updates. I barely moved, barely breathed, barely blinked. My hand stayed wrapped around his, my thumb rubbing circles on his knuckles, the way it did when he was a little boy scared of thunderstorms. At one point, the door creaked open, and I expected another nurse. But instead, Marcus walked in. He stood frozen in the doorway, clutching his backpack to his chest, his eyes wide and glassy. His hair was messy, like he'd run all the way here. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Mrs. Alvarez." I rose from my chair slowly, my joints stiff. "Oh, honey." He stepped forward, his chin trembling. Is he gonna make it?" I reached for him and pulled him into a hug, surprising us both. He held on to me like he was sinking. "We don't know yet," I whispered. "But he's fighting." He nodded against my shoulder, his breaths shaking. When he pulled back, he wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his hoodie. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I didn't make him tell you sooner. I knew something was wrong. I didn't realize it was this bad." My heart softened. "You're just a kid, sweetheart. You were trying to help your friend." He swallowed hard, looking toward the bed. Lucas lay still, tubes and wires everywhere. The rise and fall of the ventilator, the only sign of life. "I should have called 911, he whispered. "I should have done something." "You were scared," I said. "So was he." Marcus walked to the side of the bed, his fingers lightly touching Lucas's arm. "He said he didn't want to scare you," he murmured. He always said that, even when he couldn't catch his breath. A heavy ache pressed against my ribs. Before I could speak, the door opened again. Dr. Carter stepped in holding a chart, her expression different this time, more focused, more weighted. "Mrs. Alvarez," she said quietly, "we have more answers." Marcus stepped back immediately, eyes wide with fear. I stood straighter, though my insides felt like collapsing. "Tell me." She came closer, lowering her voice. "Your grandson has a severe and advanced infection, but that's not the only issue." My heart froze. "There are signs of chronic illness," she continued. "Something that's been harming his body for a long time. His immune system is extremely compromised. His blood work shows signs of a long-term condition, one he likely knew about." I felt the words like blows to the chest. "He's been hiding an illness," she said gently. "For months, maybe longer." The room tilted. I grabbed the bed rail to steady myself. What illness?" She took a breath. "We're still waiting on one final test to confirm it, but based on everything we see." Her eyes softened with a mixture of sorrow and firmness. "Your grandson wasn't just sick, Mrs. Alvarez. He's been living with a serious condition he never told anyone about. And tonight, his body simply couldn't hide it anymore." My heart shattered into pieces. Marcus's breath hitched behind me, and through the quiet hiss of the ventilator, I felt the truth settle into every corner of the room. Lucas hadn't been keeping a secret. He had been carrying a burden so heavy it was killing him. The words settled in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating, wrapping themselves around my lungs until I felt I couldn't breathe either. A serious condition, something chronic, something he'd been hiding. I looked at Lucas, pale and small against the sheets, the ventilator breathing for him with mechanical precision. And I wondered how long he had been carrying this weight alone. How many mornings had he woken up in pain and said nothing? How many nights had he lain awake struggling for breath in silence while I slept just down the hall, oblivious? Dr. Carter glanced toward the monitor as it beeped softly, then back at me with a steady, earnest gaze. "We're not giving up on him," she said. "He's young, and we have powerful treatments, but we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." I nodded, even though I felt the room spinning. My fingers trembled as I reached for Lucas's hand again, holding it gently between both of mine. His knuckles were thinner than they used to be, his fingers colder. A chill ran through me. Marcus shifted behind me, his voice cracking as he asked, Is it something he could have told us? Something he knew he had?" Dr. Carter hesitated before answering. "Yes," she said carefully. "Based on the scarring in his lungs, the severity of his symptoms, and his blood work, he knew something was wrong. He may not have known the full diagnosis, but he knew enough." Marcus turned away, covering his face with his hoodie sleeve. His shoulders shook as he struggled not to cry. "He didn't want anyone to worry," he whispered. He kept saying that, every time it got bad. I closed my eyes for a moment, the pain settling deep in my chest. My sweet boy, carrying an illness quietly, too afraid to burden the people he loved, too afraid to watch worry fill the faces around him. I could picture him sitting in his room alone, clutching his ribs, biting down on his lip to mask the pain, telling himself he just needed to push through. He shouldn't have had to fight alone. A soft knock sounded at the door, and a nurse entered holding a chart. She glanced between me and the doctor before speaking quietly. The confirmatory test just came in. Dr. Carter thanked her and took the papers, flipping through them with quick, trained eyes. She skimmed the lines once, twice, then exhaled slowly, steadying her voice before turning back to me. "Mrs. Alvarez," she said gently, "your grandson has been living with a chronic autoimmune condition, one that attacks the lungs. It's something he likely had symptoms of for a long time." My heart clenched. "Autoimmune," I whispered. What does that mean for him?" "It means his immune system has been attacking his own body," she explained softly. "That's what caused the scarring. The infections, the fluid. His lungs have been deteriorating for months, maybe over a year. A year of pain, a year of silence, a year of pretending everything was fine." I felt my knees weaken, and I gripped the bed rail tighter, forcing myself to stay upright. Lucas lay motionless, a long tube in his throat, wires across his chest, machines tracking every beat of the heart he fought so hard to protect. "He didn't want to tell me," I whispered again, more to myself than anyone else. "He thought I couldn't handle it." The doctor's voice softened. "Children often hide their pain to protect the people they love, especially boys his age. They think being strong means being silent." I brushed Lucas's hair gently, my fingertips trembling as I traced the curve of his forehead. His skin felt too warm, his cheeks flushed with fever still fighting its way through him. "What happens now?" I asked. "We treat the infection," she said. "We reduce the inflammation. We stabilize him. Then, once he's strong enough to breathe on his own again, we address the chronic illness. But the first steps are keeping him alive and helping his lungs recover." Alive. Such a simple word. Such a fragile one. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "He's young. That's on his side. Don't lose hope yet." She stepped out, leaving me alone with the steady hiss of the ventilator and the soft beeping of the monitors. Marcus pulled a chair next to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know," he said. "I swear I didn't know it was this serious." I shook my head gently. "It wasn't your job to know, sweetheart. It should have been mine." He wiped his eyes. "He didn't tell anyone, not even me. When he said he was tired, I thought he meant school, you know? Stress? Homework? Senior year?" "I thought the same," I whispered. "Kids get tired." I didn't want to hover. We both fell silent, our eyes locked on Lucas's still body, the rise and fall of his chest the only motion in the room. The sun outside climbed higher, casting long beams of warm light through the blinds, streaking across the floor in soft gold. It felt almost cruel, the idea that the world outside continued as usual while mine had been cracked in half. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and a tall man in a white coat stepped in. His eyes were kind but serious, his voice warm as he introduced himself. "I'm Dr. Marin," he said. "Pulmonology. I'll be taking over your grandson's case." He walked to the bedside, examining the monitors, the ventilator settings, the lines of pain etched into Lucas's face. "He's stable," the doctor said quietly. "But he's not out of danger." My breath caught. What can we do?" "We're starting aggressive treatment," he said. "Antibiotics, steroids, respiratory support. We'll do everything possible to reverse the infection and stabilize the inflammation." He paused, looking me directly in the eyes. "He's strong, his body is exhausted, but he hasn't given up." A tear rolled down my cheek. He continued, "The next 24 hours are critical. Stay with him. Your presence helps more than you know." When he left, the room felt impossibly quiet. I held Lucas's hand tighter, leaning close enough to feel the faint warmth of his skin. "I'm here," I whispered. "You're not fighting alone anymore, I promise." Marcus sniffed beside me. "He's stubborn," he said. "He'll fight." A small, broken smile tugged at my lips. "He comes by it honestly." Hours passed. Nurses changed shifts. The sun dipped lower. The ventilator hummed on, steady as a heartbeat. At one point, Lucas's hand twitched again, fingers curling just slightly around mine. My breath caught. "I'm here, baby," I whispered. "Grandma's right here." His eyelids fluttered, just for a moment. Not fully, not enough to break through the sedation, but enough to know he heard me. It was then, just as his fingers tightened faintly around mine, that the door opened again, and someone stepped in who I never expected to see. Someone who had abandoned him long ago. His mother. She stood in the doorway like a ghost I hadn't seen in years, her silhouette framed by the bright hallway light behind her. For a split second, I wondered if the exhaustion was making me imagine things, because Lucas's mother never came. Not to birthdays, not to school events, not to holidays, not to anything that required responsibility or presence. But there she was, Amanda, wearing wrinkled jeans, a loose blouse, and an expression I couldn't read. Her eyes went straight to the bed, and her breath hitched audibly when she saw the ventilator, the tubes, the monitors surrounding her son. Her hand flew up to her mouth, and she took a shaky step forward. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God." Marcus stiffened beside me, gripping his backpack straps. I didn't say a word. My tongue felt heavy, my chest tight, my heart pounding hard enough to bruise my ribs. Amanda looked thinner than I remembered. Her hair pulled back into the kind of messy bun you only get when you run your hands through your hair too many times in one day. Her mascara was smudged under her eyes like she'd cried on the way here, or maybe earlier, for reasons I didn't want to think about. She took another step, then another, until she stood at the foot of the bed, staring at her son like she was seeing him for the first time. Her lips trembled. Her hands shook violently. "Lucas," she whispered, voice cracking. "My baby." I watched her, unmoving, my emotions a tangled knot so tight I could barely breathe. Part of me wanted to hold her, to comfort her the way I'd comforted her when she was a little girl and scraped her knee. Another part of me wanted to scream, wanted to shake her, wanted to demand where she had been while her son silently drowned in his own lungs. But I stayed silent, because this moment wasn't about me. Lucas lay still, unconscious, unaware of the storm his mother's presence brought into the room. Amanda reached out with a trembling hand and touched his foot through the blanket, as if she were too afraid to touch anything else. A soft, broken cry escaped her. "Mom," she whispered, not to me, but out loud to herself. "What did I do?" I swallowed hard, my throat aching. Marcus took a step back, feeling the tension filling the room, but he didn't leave. He stood silently, eyes flicking between us. After a long moment, Amanda wiped her face with the back of her hand and finally looked at me. Her eyes were wild, desperate, searching for an explanation. "What happened to him?" she asked, voice shaking. "Why is he like this? How did it get this bad?" It took me a moment to find my voice. "I didn't know," I said softly. "He hid it from me too, from all of us. He didn't want anyone to worry." She pressed a hand to her chest. "He wouldn't even answer my calls," she whispered. "I thought he was mad at me. I thought he needed space." Her breath trembled. I never imagined this. Anger simmered deep in my belly, but I kept my tone steady. "He needed help," I said. "He needed someone to see the signs he was trying to hide." Her eyes filled again. I should have come sooner." The words rang hollow in the sterile hospital air. We both knew it, but the truth didn't matter now. What mattered was the boy on the bed. Amanda pulled the chair from the corner and sat beside him. Her hands hovered over his wrist before she finally gathered the courage to hold it. The moment she did, her face crumpled and she sobbed quietly, shoulders shaking. She leaned forward, her forehead brushing the back of his hand. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I turned away, unable to watch anymore, staring at the faint reflections in the dark screen mounted on the wall. It was easier than watching a daughter break open at the bedside of the child she'd spent years drifting in and out of. Minutes passed in heavy silence. Then Amanda lifted her head, eyes red and swollen, and whispered, "Does he know? Does he know I'm here?" I shook my head gently. "He's sedated. The ventilator is helping him breathe, but he might hear you. Sometimes they do." She looked at him again, her tears dripping onto the white sheet. "I left him," she whispered, "and he still fought this alone. Why didn't he call me? Why didn't he tell me he was hurting?" My heart twisted painfully. Because he didn't want to disappoint you, I said softly. He didn't want to be a burden to anyone. Her breath caught as if I'd slapped her. That boy, she choked out, has never been a burden. Not for 1 second. I didn't argue, but the truth sat between us like a shadow, because her actions had told him otherwise. The door opened, breaking the silence, and Dr. Carter stepped back into the room. She paused when she saw Amanda, recognizing the resemblance at once. "You must be Lucas's mother," she said gently. Amanda nodded quickly, wiping her cheeks. Yes, I'm Amanda." "I'm Dr. Carter," she said. "I'm part of the team caring for your son. We're doing everything we can." Amanda stood, her hands twisting nervously. "Please, what does he need? What can I do?" Dr. Carter approached slowly, choosing her words with care. "Right now, he needs rest. The ventilator is keeping him stable, but his lungs are very compromised. We're treating the infection aggressively. The next few hours will tell us how well he responds." Amanda swallowed hard. "Will he survive?" Dr. Carter didn't answer immediately. She glanced at Lucas, at the monitors, at the fragile rise and fall of his chest. "He's fighting," she finally said. "His body is tired, but he's young. That gives us hope. Hope, the softest word, the heaviest one." Amanda covered her mouth again as tears spilled from her eyes. "Doctor," Carter added gently, "we'll be watching him closely. If either of you needs anything, let us know." She stepped out, leaving us once again in the quiet hum of machines. Amanda sank into the chair. "I should have been here," she whispered. "I should have taken care of him." Her voice cracked, raw and honest. "But you were," I said softly, surprising even myself. "You're here now." She looked at me, searching my face for anger, for blame, for the resentment I had every right to feel. I didn't give her any of it, because right now wasn't the moment for punishment. It was a moment for love, and for Lucas. Amanda took a shaky breath and placed her hand over Lucas's again. "Baby," she whispered, "please don't leave me. I promise I'll do better. I'll be better. Just stay." I closed my eyes, letting her words settle into the room like a prayer. And suddenly, Lucas's fingers twitched again. More deliberate this time, more insistent. His eyelids fluttered, his eyebrows drawing together faintly as if he were trying to reach us from somewhere far away. Amanda gasped. "Lucas, baby." His chest rose and fell in the mechanical rhythm of the ventilator. But something had changed, something subtle, but real. I leaned forward, gripping his hand. "Baby," I whispered. "We're right here, both of us." His eyelashes trembled. Amanda held her breath. And in the quiet hum of the machines, with sunlight slipping across the sheets, Lucas moved his hand, slow, weak, but unmistakably toward ours. His fingers curled weakly around mine, then around his mother's, his hand trapped between both of ours, like he was anchoring himself to the world through our touch. Amanda let out a sound halfway between a sob and a gasp, her free hand flying to her chest as if her heart had leapt too fast for her body to handle. I leaned closer, feeling the heat of his skin, faint but warmer than before, the subtle tension of a boy fighting his way back to consciousness through layers of sedation and exhaustion. "Lucas," Amanda whispered shakily, her lips trembling. "Baby, can you hear us?" His eyelids fluttered again, not fully opening but moving enough to show the effort he was making. His eyebrows knit together faintly, the smallest expression of discomfort or awareness. But it was something. It was movement. It was life. It was him fighting. I brushed my thumb over the back of his hand. "That's it, sweetheart," I whispered softly. "We're right here. You're safe." A nurse walked in at that moment, pausing when she saw him moving. Her expression shifted immediately. "He's responsive," she said gently. "That's a good sign." Amanda wiped her face with her sleeve, eyes red and shining. "Does that mean he's waking up?" "Not fully," the nurse said, checking the ventilator settings. "He's still under sedation, but sometimes they drift closer to the surface. It means his body is reacting. It means he's fighting. Fighting. That word echoed in my mind, vibrating through my bones. The nurse adjusted the medication drip, monitoring his vitals. "Just keep talking to him," she said softly. "Hearing familiar voices can help more than you'd think." She stepped out, closing the door gently behind her. Amanda leaned closer to him, her voice trembling. "Oh, Lucas, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here sooner." Her fingers tightened around his. "Please come back to me. Please." Her tears fell freely onto his blanket, soaking the fabric. For the first time in a long time, I saw not the woman who disappeared from his life, but a mother who had just realized how close she'd come to losing her child. Lucas's forehead creased, a faint twitch in the muscles around his eyes, like he was reacting to her voice. His throat moved beneath the tape, holding the breathing tube, a small, reflexive swallow that made my heart leap. "He hears you," I whispered. "He knows you're here." Amanda nodded, though her chin quivered like it might fall apart if someone breathed too loudly. "I'm here, baby," she whispered again. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Minutes passed in silence, except for the soft hiss of the ventilator and the measured beeping of the monitor, tracking every beat of Lucas's fragile heart. I watched his hand, still nestled between ours, twitch again, so faintly it could have been my imagination, but I knew it wasn't. He was trying. He was reaching. He was fighting. At some point, Amanda sank back into the chair, exhausted, her eyes drifting to the floor for a moment as she tried to collect herself. Marcus quietly excused himself with a soft whisper, promising he'd come back later. I thanked him with a gentle squeeze of his arm, watching him slip out of the room with his shoulders still trembling from the fear of almost losing his best friend. After he left, the room felt smaller, quieter, heavier. Amanda looked up at me, her voice almost a whisper. "Mom, how long has he been like this?" I swallowed hard, my eyes drifting back to Lucas's pale face. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "He hid it well, too well, but he's been tired for months, pale, coughing, losing weight." I kept asking him if he was okay, but he always said he was fine. She covered her mouth again, guilt carving deep lines into her expression. "I should have seen it," she murmured. "I should have asked more, pushed more." "You can't blame yourself for what he hid," I said softly, though the words felt heavy in my throat. "He didn't want either of us to worry. He thought he could handle it alone." She nodded slowly, tears falling again. "Just like his father," she whispered, voice cracking. "The same quiet, the same stubbornness." I looked at her sharply. "His father?" She hesitated, staring down at Lucas's hand. She began, then her voice faltered. "He had a lung condition too, autoimmune. He never told me until it was too late." The air left my lungs in a rush. Amanda's eyes softened with grief. I thought Lucas was healthy. I thought he didn't inherit it. I didn't think—" She cut herself off, shaking her head. "I didn't think it could happen again." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words pressing hard against my chest. So there had been a history, a precedent, a warning, and no one had told me. No one had told Lucas, or maybe they did, and he just didn't want it to be real. I reached for him again, brushing a curl from his forehead. His skin was still warm, the fever clinging despite the medications fighting beneath the surface. "We're here now," I whispered. "That's what matters." Amanda nodded, wiping her cheeks. "We'll do better," she whispered. "Both of us." The hours stretched again, long and slow. Nurses came and went. Medications were adjusted, vitals monitored. Shadows lengthened across the room as the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue across Lucas's still form. Then, just as the light softened into a soft orange glow, his eyelids fluttered again, this time stronger, longer. Amanda leaned forward instantly, gripping his hand tighter. "Lucas? Baby? Can you hear me?" His eyelashes trembled, lifting just enough for the faintest glimpse of hazel beneath them. His brow furrowed, a tiny pained expression crossing his face. His fingers twitched again, squeezing weakly. My breath caught. "Sweetheart," I whispered, leaning close enough that my voice brushed his ear. "You're safe. You're not alone. We're both right here." His lips moved faintly beneath the tape, as if he were trying to form a word around the tube he couldn't speak through. Amanda's voice broke. "Baby, it's okay. You're okay. We're here." His chest rose and fell with the ventilator's help, but something in the room shifted, something subtle yet unmistakable. There was awareness behind those half-open eyes, recognition, fear, relief. A nurse stepped in then and immediately noticed. "He's responding again," she said with a hint of excitement. "That's good. It means his body is stabilizing." She checked the monitor, her smile growing slightly. "His oxygen saturation is improving. Blood pressure's holding. He's still critical, but this is progress." Amanda let out a broken, astonished laugh, half joy, half disbelief, as she brushed tears from her cheeks. "He's trying," she whispered. "He's really trying." I squeezed his hand gently. "That's my boy." The nurse adjusted the sedation slightly, then said, "He might drift in and out like this for a while. Speak to him. It helps." After she left, we both leaned close to him again, holding his hands, whispering love into his ears, filling the room with words we should have said sooner, but that he desperately needed to hear now. And for the first time since that terrifying night began, I felt hope flicker again, fragile, faint, but alive. The hours after that felt different, not less frightening, but less like free fall and more like standing on shaky ground instead of falling through an endless sky. His numbers still weren't pretty, but they weren't falling off a cliff anymore. Every time a nurse would peek in, check his vitals, or adjust a bag on the IV pole, they'd leave saying the same quiet phrase that began to feel like a song I clung to, trending in the right direction. I hadn't slept, not really, just snatched 5 minutes here and there with my head bowed over the bed rail, my fingers still wrapped around his. If I let go, I felt like something terrible would happen, like my grip was the last piece of thread tying him down to this side of heaven. Amanda sat in the other chair, shoulders slumped, hair coming loose from that messy bun, the remnants of makeup smeared and faded from too many tears. There were long patches where we didn't talk at all, just listened to the ventilator and the monitor and the quiet hush of the ICU outside our small room. Sometimes silence is louder than any argument. In one of those stretches, when the light outside the window shifted from bright afternoon to that softer, honey-colored glow that comes right before sunset, Amanda spoke, her voice so hushed I almost missed it. "He used to call me every night when he was little," she whispered. I glanced at her, but she was staring straight ahead at the blanket covering her son's legs. "When he stayed with you during the summer in Atlanta, remember? He'd call me before bed and tell me everything he'd done that day. How you made mac and cheese and let him stir. How you took him to the park and he got grass stains and you laughed instead of getting mad. How you read him that same book 3 times in a row because he said he needed to know if the dog made it home safely each time." My throat tightened. "I remember," I said softly. "You know when that stopped?" she asked. I didn't answer. I wasn't sure there was a safe answer. "It stopped," she said, "around the time he was 10. I was working late a lot, busy, tired. Sometimes I didn't pick up. Sometimes I said, 'Buddy, can we talk tomorrow? Mommy's really tired today.' And then tomorrow turned into next week, and I'll call you back turned into I forgot, and one night he just didn't call." She swallowed, a painful, jagged sound, and he never did again. I watched her, my heart aching. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of the blanket, right where Lucas's shin would be beneath the folds. "He learned," she whispered, "that when he really needed someone he shouldn't bother them, because they might be busy, or tired, or disappointed." She finally looked at me, eyes swollen and red. What kind of mother teaches her kid that? I didn't say the thing that crossed my mind first, that children learn what we live, not what we preach. I didn't tell her that Lucas had given me that same excuse when I begged him to let me call a doctor. I don't want to bother anyone. I just said the only thing that seemed true and kind at the same time. The kind that can still learn better, I said. If she wants to. Amanda's lips parted, then closed again. Her gaze returned to Lucas's face. "I do," she whispered. "I just don't know if he'll give me the chance." I looked at our boy, half sedated, fighting a war inside his lungs, and thought, he's given all of us more chances than we deserved. "He will," I said quietly. "That boy's got a softer heart than any of us earned." She let out a wet little laugh that sounded half like a sob. "He gets that from you, you know. He gets that from God," I murmured. "We just didn't completely mess it up." The ventilator sighed every few seconds, filling his lungs, giving them the break they needed to heal. I found myself matching my own breathing to its rhythm, in and out, like we were all tied to one machine for a little while. Somewhere around late evening, a tall nurse with kind eyes came in, glanced over his chart, and said, "He's doing well enough that the doctor wants to start weaning the ventilator a little more tonight. Just small steps. See how he tolerates it." Amanda's eyes widened. "Does that mean he'll breathe on his own?" "Not yet," the nurse said gently. "But it's a sign we're heading toward that. If his lungs keep improving, we might have that conversation soon." As she adjusted the settings, she looked at Lucas and smiled. "You're surprising us, kiddo." In a good way. When she left, I squeezed his hand again. "You always were stubborn," I whispered. "At least you're finally using it for the right thing." His fingers twitched like he agreed. Later that night, when Amanda stepped out to get some coffee and call her boss, the room grew quiet again. Just me, the machines, the soft tick of the clock on the wall, and my grandson. I leaned my elbows on the mattress and bowed my head. "Lord," I breathed, "I don't have any fancy words for you. You know how tired I am. You know how scared. You know my heart better than I do. I don't know what your plan is. I just ask, please, let there still be time in it for this boy. Let him grow old enough to tell this story someday. Let him see that asking for help isn't weakness. Let all of us see it." A tear slid down onto his sheet. I didn't bother wiping it away. "And if you give him back to us," I whispered, "I promise I'll spend whatever time I've got left making sure he never carries something this heavy alone again." I opened my eyes. His face was the same, pale, slack from the sedation, but there was a quietness in the room that didn't feel as sharp as it had before. Fear was still there, but it had a neighbor now, something like peace. The next morning came with fluorescent light and the sound of new footsteps, a new shift of nurses, the clink of fresh charts and coffee cups. Dr. Carter came in with a different energy than the first night, still serious, still focused, but with a small light in her eyes. "His blood work looks better," she said, flipping through the chart. "Inflammation markers are down. Oxygen requirements are lowering. He's not out of the woods, but he's walking toward the edge instead of deeper in." Amanda and I both exhaled at the same time. Then Dr. Carter added, "I think we can aim to extubate him later today, if he continues to respond this well." Amanda's hand flew to her chest again. "Take the tube out?" "If he passes a few breathing trials and his numbers stay stable," the doctor confirmed. "We'll test him gradually. Let him breathe more on his own while the ventilator assists. If he tolerates it, we'll remove the tube and transition to high-flow oxygen instead." I didn't fully understand all the technical parts, but I understood the heart of it. If all went well, by tonight my grandson could be breathing on his own again, with help, with support, but his own lungs. "Is that safe?" I asked. "We'll only do it if it is," she said. "The worst thing we could do is rush him. But his body is surprising us. He's stronger than we expected after how sick he was." I smiled faintly. "You don't know him like I do," I murmured. "This boy's been strong his whole life." The day moved with a nervous kind of anticipation. Every time a nurse came in, I watched her face, searching for any sign of concern. Instead, I saw cautious smiles, little nods, phrases like, "He's doing great," and "This is what we want," and "He's trending the right way." They ran breathing trials in short intervals, lowering the ventilator's support, encouraging his lungs to take on more work, little by little. His chest rose and fell on its own more than before. Every time they did it, Amanda and I held our breath, watching his oxygen numbers, silently chanting, "Stay up, stay steady, stay strong." And every time, somehow, he did. By late afternoon, they'd decided it was time. A respiratory therapist came in with a calm, focused expression. She explained every step, though I only half heard her over the roar of my own heartbeat. Amanda stood on one side of the bed, I stood on the other. We each held one of his hands. "Lucas," the therapist said as she readied everything, "if you can hear me, we're going to take this tube out now, okay? You've been doing more of the work on your own. Just keep doing that. It might feel strange and uncomfortable at first, but we'll be right here, helping you." His lashes flickered faintly. The nurse loosened the tape. The therapist checked the airflow. Dr. Carter stood nearby, monitoring his vitals. The room felt too small for all the people inside it, and way too small for all the fear in my chest. "On 3, the therapist said. 1, 2, 3. She pulled. The tube slid from his throat in one smooth motion. He gagged, coughed, a wet, raw sound that both terrified and relieved me at the same time. The nurse quickly suctioned his mouth and the back of his throat, while the therapist settled a soft mask over his nose and mouth, connecting it to a humming machine beside the bed. "Nice and easy, Lucas," she murmured. "Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. Let the machine help you." He coughed again, chest hitching. The monitor beeped faster, then settled. His oxygen dipped, then climbed. His eyes fluttered more deliberately now. I held my own breath until the therapist glanced at the monitor and nodded. "He's tolerating it," she said. "Good job, kid." My knees nearly gave out from relief. Amanda leaned so far over the rail, I thought she might climb into the bed. "Baby," she whispered through tears. "Can you hear us?" His eyelids opened, slowly, heavily, like each millimeter cost him effort, but they opened. Hazel eyes. Unfocused at first, cloudy with medication and exhaustion, then slowly sharpening. He looked confused, scared. Then he saw the mask on his face, the tube beside him, the cords attached to his chest, and panic flashed across his features. The monitor spiked. I leaned in quickly, squeezing his hand. "Lucas," I said firmly, "look at me." His gaze flew to mine, wild, like a startled animal. His breaths came too fast, too shallow, fogging the inside of the mask. "You're okay," I said calmly, even though I felt anything but calm. "You're safe. You're in the hospital. You got very sick, but the doctors have been helping you. You're not on the big tube anymore, just this mask. It's giving you oxygen, but you're breathing on your own now, baby. Do you understand?" His eyes glossed with tears. Slowly, he nodded once. Amanda's hand shook as she brushed his hair back from his forehead. "Hey, baby," she whispered. "It's Mom." His gaze slid to her. For a moment, there was confusion, surprise, then something else, something complicated and painful and raw. His brow furrowed as he tried to speak, but the mask muffled the words, turning them into strained, breathy sounds. "Don't try to talk yet," I said quickly. "Your throat's going to be sore. Just rest. We're not going anywhere." Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes, trailing down toward his ears. He squeezed my fingers, then Amanda's, like he needed to make sure we were both solid, real, not hallucinations conjured in a fever dream. The therapist adjusted the flow and nodded again. "He's doing well," she said quietly. "He'll tire easily, but this is a huge step." When she left, the room felt strangely bigger and smaller at the same time. No more ventilator breathing for him. No more tube in his throat. Just the hum of the high-flow oxygen and the rasp of his own lungs doing their best with support. Amanda sat back down slowly, like her legs might not hold her. "You scared me half to death," she whispered, voice breaking as she wiped at her eyes. "Which, I suppose, is fair because I scared you half to death for years. Guess we're even." His gaze flicked to her, and for the first time since he'd woken, there was something like a tiny flicker of humor behind the pain. He tried to say something again, but the sound came out as a hoarse rasp. "Shh," I soothed. "Later. Right now, you just breathe." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, this time slower, like he was testing his strength 1 second at a time. I watched his chest rise and fall beneath the blanket, each breath still a little labored but his own. The lines on the monitor weren't pretty, but they weren't screaming anymore. They were steadying, settling, learning a new rhythm. The boy I'd watched fight in silence for months was finally surrounded by noise, but the kind of noise that heals instead of hides. A few hours later, after the initial storm of waking settled into a fragile calm, the nurse came in with a cup of water and a little sponge on a stick. "Your throat's going to be very sore," she told him gently. "You can't chug water yet, but I can let you moisten your mouth a little." He looked at her like she was an angel. He accepted the sponge between cracked lips, his eyes closing as the coolness touched his tongue. When she left, Amanda shifted in her seat and looked at him carefully. "I know you're tired," she said quietly, "and you don't have to talk right now, but I need you to know something." His eyes met hers again. "I am so sorry," she said, voice breaking, "for not being there sooner, for not seeing how bad it was. For every time I made you feel like you had to carry everything alone so you wouldn't bother anyone. I was wrong, Lucas. So wrong." A tear slipped down his cheek. He swallowed painfully, then rasped through the mask. Didn't want you to worry, baby, she whispered, leaning forward. That's my job, to worry, to show up, to be there. I'm the one who failed at it, not you. I watched the two of them, my heart aching and grateful all at once. Families don't break in one moment, they crack in 1,000 small ones. But sometimes, if we're lucky, they start healing in one. Lucas's gaze drifted to me. His brows knit faintly, as if he were trying to remember where the dream ended and reality began. I smiled softly and squeezed his hand. You didn't think you were getting rid of me that easy, did you? His eyes softened, and even through the mask, I could see the faint curl of a smile at the corner of his mouth. He mouthed, soundless, "Thank you." I patted his hand. You scared me, Cielo, I whispered. Next time you decide to have a near-death experience, send me a memo first. The corners of his eyes crinkled just a little. That tiny bit of laughter in his expression was worth more than any lab result. The next days were hard, but they were a different kind of hard. The kind that looks forward instead of over its shoulder. He stayed in ICU a while longer, then stepped down to a regular floor once they were sure his lungs wouldn't betray him again overnight. Breathing was still work. Walking from the bed to the bathroom felt like running a marathon. Eating made him tired. Talking made him cough. But he kept doing all of it, one small step at a time. One afternoon, when the nurse had just left after helping him sit up in the recliner by the window, he looked at me for a long moment, then rasped, "When did you know?" I sat back in the chair opposite him, tracing a wrinkle in my skirt. "That night," I said, "when I woke up and heard you in the bathroom. You sounded like you were drowning. I went to your door, but you locked it. That scared me. I started putting the pieces together after that." He looked down at his hands. The IV had been removed from one, leaving faint bruises along the veins. "Sorry," he murmured, "for lying." "I'm sorry," I said, "for letting you think you had to." His eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised. "All my life," I said, "I taught your mother, and maybe you by accident, that I could handle everything, that asking for help was something other people did. I told myself it was strength, but really, it was fear and pride dressed up real pretty. I thought I was protecting everyone by never needing anything. Truth is, I was teaching you exactly the wrong lesson." He frowned weakly. "It's not your fault. It's not just mine," I conceded. "But it's not just yours either, or your mother's. We all taught each other wrong things somewhere along the line. You just paid the highest price for it." He swallowed, his throat still tender. "I didn't want to be extra trouble." My heart cracked all over again. "Lucas," I said firmly, leaning forward, "you are not extra trouble. If you break an arm, I want to know. If you fail a test, I want to know. If your lungs feel like they're filling with cement, I absolutely want to know." His lips twitched, but his eyes were wet. "You hearing me?" I asked. He nodded faintly. "Say it," I insisted gently. "With that sick little voice of yours." He took a shallow breath. "I'm not a burden," he rasped. "Not extra trouble." "Good," I said. "Now let's both try to live like we actually believe that." He let out another ghost of a laugh, then coughed, wincing. I handed him the little pillow the nurse had given him to hold against his chest when he coughed. He pressed it there, eyes squeezed shut, until the pain eased. When he opened them again, he looked older somehow, not just from the illness, but from the kind of knowledge you don't really want, but can't give back. "I heard you," he said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. "At one point, when I was out, I heard you talking." I stiffened. "What did you hear?" "You said," he frowned, searching his memory, "you told God to let me stay, that you'd make sure I didn't have to do this alone again." My eyes burned. "I meant it." He nodded, his gaze steady on mine, and for the first time since he got sick, I saw something new there. Trust. Not the default trust of a child who assumes the adults know what they're doing. The earned trust of someone who's seen how fragile the people he loves really are and chooses them anyway. The day he was finally discharged, the nurse wheeled him out with a portable oxygen tank at his side, his legs wrapped in cotton sweatpants, his hoodie too big on his thinner frame. Amanda walked on one side of the wheelchair. I walked on the other. When we reached the sliding glass doors of the hospital, he squinted like the sunlight was something new and too bright to look at all at once. Outside, the air was warm and humid, but it smelled like life, like cars and trees and bad coffee from the stand on the corner. It didn't smell like antiseptic and plastic and fear. He lifted his face, breathing out slowly through pursed lips the way the respiratory therapist taught him. "Feels weird," he said. "To be outside?" I asked. "To be alive," he answered quietly. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Get used to it," I said. "I plan on you being around a long time." At home, everything had changed and nothing had. The couch still sagged in the middle. The same old picture of me and my late husband in Orlando still hung crooked in the hallway. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee, garlic, and the fabric softener I used on the dish towels. But there was a new hum in the house now. The quiet whir of the oxygen concentrator we'd set up in his room, the beeps of the little pulse oximeter, the rustle of paperwork from follow-up appointments on the counter. We set up a chart by the fridge with his meds, inhalers, breathing treatments, and daily walks. It looked like something you'd see in a clinic, but it lived in my Miami kitchen, right between the magnet from Tampa and the one from Savannah. The first night he slept at home, I barely closed my eyes. I sat in the old recliner outside his door, a blanket over my knees, listening. Every cough made me twitch. Every silence made me sit up straighter to make sure I could hear him breathing. Around 2 a.m, his door cracked open, and he peered out, hair mussed, oxygen cannula still tucked in his nose. "Abuela?" he whispered, because somewhere along the way he'd slipped into calling me that instead of Grandma, and I never corrected him. "Why are you awake?" "Why are you awake?" I countered. "Bathroom," he said. And I thought I heard something. "It's just me being an anxious old woman," I said. "Go back to bed. You need your rest." He stepped out a little further, leaning against the doorframe. "You're in that chair," he said, narrowing his eyes, "because of me." "I'm in this chair," I corrected, "because I'd rather be tired than sorry." "Don't flatter yourself. You're not that important." He snorted a laugh that ended in a small cough. Then he did something that surprised me. He walked over, slowly, and tugged the blanket tighter around my knees. "You're going to get cold," he muttered. My heart did something funny in my chest. "Go to bed," I repeated gently. "If you stop breathing, I promise the machines will make enough noise to wake me." "Comforting," he grumbled, but there was a tiny smile on his face. He hesitated, then asked, "Can I leave my door open?" I blinked. "Of course." He nodded and shuffled back to his room, leaving the door half open like he had when he was little and afraid of thunderstorms. I leaned my head back in the chair, tears pricking my eyes. Sometimes healing doesn't sound like angels singing. Sometimes it just sounds like a 17-year-old boy wanting his bedroom door not quite closed. As weeks turned into months, the crisis blurred into memory, but never into something small. We went to endless appointments, pulmonologists, immunologists, follow-ups with Dr. Carter, nutritionists, physical therapists who coaxed strength back into those tired legs, one hallway lap at a time. Amanda stayed. She got a job closer to the house, not as glamorous as the ones she used to chase, but steady. She started coming to appointments too, sitting beside him, taking notes, asking questions. Sometimes they'd argue about small things, who forgot to refill a prescription, whether he could go to a friend's house without his portable oxygen. But the arguments were different now. They were the kind families have when they're trying, when they care enough to show up. One Sunday afternoon, months later, we sat on the patio behind the house, the Miami air warm but softened by a light breeze. Lucas sat in a lawn chair, his oxygen tank beside him, a blanket over his lap, a book face down in his hands. Amanda was inside on a call with his school, working out how to manage his classes with his new health limitations. I brought out a tray with lemonade and those little butter cookies he liked, the ones in the blue tin. He gave me a look that said he knew I was trying to fatten him up. "You don't have to watch me every second, you know," he said quietly as I set the tray down. "I did the dying almost thing already. I'm trying not to repeat it." I sat in the chair next to him, my old bones thankful for the cushion. "This isn't watching," I said. "This is sitting. There's a difference. Watching implies I'm waiting for you to break. Sitting means I'm here whether you break or not." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. Fair, he agreed. He sipped his lemonade, then tilted his head back, looking up at the patch of sky framed by our building and the swaying palm just beyond the fence. After a while, he said, "You think I'll always be scared now?" "Of what?" "Of," he gestured vaguely to his chest, "this. Of every cough, every time I get tired, every time I walk upstairs and my lungs scream." I thought about how I flinched now when I heard an ambulance siren, how my heart still raced sometimes when I walked past a hospital. "Probably," I said honestly, "for a while, maybe a long while." He let out a slow breath, watching it leave his lips like it might carry some of his fear away. "That sucks." "It does," I agreed. "But being scared doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you understand what you almost lost." He nodded slowly. "You scared?" "All the time," I said. He glanced at me in surprise. "Really?" "Really," I said. "But I've been scared before. I was scared when your grandfather died. I was scared when your mother disappeared into her own life. I was scared the first night you slept in that back room. And I realized there was a whole human heart beating in this house that I didn't know how to protect." I smiled faintly. "You know what I learned?" "What?" "That it's better to be scared together than pretend you're fine alone." He licked his lips, thinking that over. "So we tell each other?" he asked. "When we're scared?" "Seems like a good start," I said. "Better than hiding dialysis in the bathroom at 2 a.m. He winced, but there was a ghost of a smile on his face. "Yeah," he murmured. "That was not my best plan." "No," I agreed. "But you're young. You get more grace than I do." He picked at the corner of his book for a moment, then said, "I want to tell them, you know. Other kids. Kids like me." "Tell them what?" "That hiding it, the sickness, the fear, it doesn't make you stronger," he said slowly. "It just makes you sicker. Lonelier." He glanced at his oxygen tank. "Maybe if somebody had told me that earlier, I wouldn't have waited so long. Maybe," his voice trailed off, "maybe you can be that somebody for the next kid," I said. He looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "You think anyone would listen?" "You survived something that kills a lot of people," I said quietly. "Somebody will listen." That fall, once he was stronger, he started volunteering once a week at a support group at the hospital, a little circle of folding chairs and bad coffee where teenagers with all kinds of chronic illnesses sat and stared at the floor until someone brave enough spoke first. Sometimes that someone was him. Sometimes it wasn't. But every time, when a kid said, "I don't want my parents to worry," he'd smile sadly and say, "Let them. It's better than them planning your funeral." He didn't tell them every detail about the night he almost died. Sometimes he'd just say, "There was a night I thought I wasn't going to make it. My abuela drove like a maniac, and the doctors did their thing, and I woke up with a tube down my throat and my grandma holding my hand, and my mom crying so hard I thought the walls might fall." Then he'd look at them and add, "Don't make your people find out you're sick that way. Give them the chance to show up before it's almost too late." Whenever I dropped him off at the hospital and watched him walk in, slower than other kids his age, but steady, I felt something in my chest soften. He could have come out of this angry, bitter, closed. Instead, he came out cracked open, but not broken. 3 days before Christmas, we sat in the living room, the little artificial tree lit in the corner, the same one I'd bought on clearance a decade ago. There were 3 stockings hung on the wall now instead of 2. Mine, his, Amanda's. She'd been the one to add her own back into the lineup, taping it beside his with a quiet, "If it's okay." It was. Lucas rested on the couch with a soft blanket over his legs, a mug of cocoa in his hands. His cannula was still in, the tube trailing back to the concentrator humming in the hallway, but the flow was lower now. We watched some old movie on the TV, the kind with grainy snow effects and actors who talked too fast. Halfway through, during a commercial, he muted the sound and turned to me. "Abuela? Do you ever regret it?" "Regret what, Cielo?" "Not, I don't know," he said, searching for the words. "Not running away. Not telling me to go somewhere else. Not deciding I was too much trouble." My chest ached. "Not for 1 second," I said. "Even with the hospital bills, and the appointments, and the late-night panic?" He pressed, his gaze searching mine. "All of it," I said. "If I could go back and change anything, I would have pushed harder sooner. I would have asked more questions. I would have told you from the beginning that you don't have to be strong for me, that I would rather cry with you in a doctor's office than smile at you in a funeral home. His eyes filled slowly, tears gathering in the corners. I almost left you, he whispered. I shook my head. You stayed, I said. That's the part I'm holding on to. He wiped his cheeks with the back of his hand, then gave me a small, crooked smile. You know what I remember? He said. From that night? What? I remember it was dark, and everything hurt, and I couldn't breathe, even with the machines, it felt like. And there was this moment, he frowned, trying to put something wordless into words. This moment where everything felt far away, like I was underwater, and I thought maybe it would be easier to just let go. My heart stuttered, but I stayed quiet. And then I heard you, he continued softly. You were crying. You said, please don't take my boy. I'm not done loving him yet. His voice broke on the last word. Tears slid down my face before I even felt them. I remember thinking, he whispered, if you weren't done, then I shouldn't be either. He let out a shaky breath. So I stayed. I covered my mouth with my hand, the sob too big to swallow. Thank you, I managed, for staying. He shifted a little on the couch, wincing, then rested his head carefully against my shoulder. His hair smelled like that cheap shampoo he liked, the one with the ridiculous lime green bottle. Thank you, he murmured, for making it worth it. We sat there like that, the TV casting soft light across the room, the glow of the Christmas tree reflecting in the window. Amanda walked in from the kitchen quietly, a dish towel over her shoulder, and froze when she saw us, a look of wonder crossing her face like she'd stumbled on something holy and unexpected. Instead of saying anything, she just turned off the kitchen light and sat in the armchair, pulling her legs up, watching the movie with us in silence. The room was full of all the things we never said in time, and all the things we were finally learning how to. I'm not a girl who grew up with big ideas about inspiration or teaching anyone anything beyond how to make a decent pot of arroz con pollo. I'm just an old woman who almost lost her grandson to a secret he was too scared to share. But if you're listening to this, wherever you are, in your car, in your kitchen, in your bed, with the light off and your phone too close to your face, I want you to hear this part clear as day. Don't wait until you're dying to let the people who love you show up. Don't tell yourself you're protecting them by hiding how bad it is. Don't carry an illness or an addiction or a heartbreak in silence because you think you're supposed to be the strong one. Being strong doesn't mean doing everything alone. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is walk into the next room and say, I'm not okay. I need help. Maybe you're like Lucas, sick and scared and tired of doctors' offices, telling yourself everyone is too busy to deal with your pain. Or maybe you're like Amanda, running from your own guilt until it catches you at your child's bedside. Or maybe you're like me, thinking you're protecting your family by never needing anything until you realize you taught them they had to do the same. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if this story touched your heart even a little, I want you to do something for me. Check on someone, call your grandma, text your grandson, knock on your neighbor's door. Ask the hard question, are you really okay? And if you're the one who isn't okay, take a deep breath and say the words that might just save your life. I need help. You are not a burden. You are not extra trouble. You are a human being whose presence in this world matters more than you know. If my grandson had left us that night, there would be an empty chair in my living room and an empty space in this world that no one else could fill. I promise you, there is someone who feels that way about you too, even if you don't know it yet. And if stories like mine, like ours, help you feel a little less alone, I hope you'll stick around and listen to more. There are a lot of grandmas like me out here with hearts full of real stories and second chances, and this channel is where we keep those voices alive. So take care of your health, take care of your heart, take care of your people. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment and tell me what part of the world you're in. From my little house in Miami, with my grandson's soft breathing in the next room and the sound of the ocean just far enough away to be a whisper, I'm sending you this truth. You don't have to be strong alone. Let somebody love you enough to carry the hard things with you. And if you're sitting there thinking, that all sounds nice, but it's too late for me, I want you to know I used to think that too, in quieter ways. I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it every time I told myself, I'm old, I'm set in my ways, this is just who I am. I thought it the first time I watched Lucas struggle to walk to the mailbox and told myself I shouldn't ask if he needed help because he might feel embarrassed. I thought it when I let Amanda drift farther and farther from me because I didn't want to seem like the nagging mother. I thought it when my body started breaking down in little pieces, my knees, my back, my blood pressure, and I smiled and said, I'm fine, even when I wasn't, because I didn't want to be anyone's problem. Then one night, a few months after Lucas came home from the hospital, I woke up to the sound of coughing. Not the panicked, drowning cough from that awful night, but a deep, harsh one that still sent my heart into my throat. For a second, the room spun with memories. The ICU, the ventilator, the alarms. I sat up so fast my head swam. The clock said 2:11 a.m. Miami outside was quiet and soft. No cars, just the far-off hum of the city and the faint whoosh of the air conditioning. The cough came again, muffled this time. My first instinct was the old one. Lie still, listen, wait, don't overreact, don't be dramatic. Then I remembered my own promise. I swung my legs out of bed, slipped my feet into my slippers, and shuffled down the short hallway, my hand on the wall for balance. The hallway light was off, but I didn't need it. At my age, you learn every inch of your home by memory. The creak in the third floorboard, the soft dip in the carpet by the bathroom, the way the air always feels a little cooler near Lucas's room because of the vent above his door. Another cough echoed from behind it, followed by a soft rustling sound like sheets shifting. My stomach tightened, the old fear rising up in my chest like a tide threatening to take me under. I knocked softly. Lucas? My voice cracked. Honey? No answer, just a soft breath, a shaky one. Then silence. I didn't wait. I turned the knob gently and pushed the door open. The moonlight from the street lamp outside spilled through the blinds, casting pale stripes across his room. He was sitting up, one hand pressed to his chest, his hair damp with sweat, his breathing uneven. Grandma? He whispered, surprised, embarrassed, trying to straighten up like nothing was wrong. I'm fine. I just swallowed wrong. No one swallows wrong at 2 a.m. for 2 minutes straight, I said, crossing the room slowly and sitting on the edge of his bed. His sheets were warm, his pillow rumpled from tossing. I touched his forehead. It was warm, not feverishly so, but warm enough that I felt that familiar ripple of worry. Talk to me, sweetheart. He hesitated. He always hesitated now. Ever since the hospital, he walked a tightrope between wanting to protect me and wanting to be honest. And I walked right beside him, trying not to fall into fear every time he coughed or winced or rubbed his chest with that quiet, frightened expression he thought I didn't see. It's nothing serious, he said, voice hoarse. Just a tight feeling. It happens sometimes. How long has it been happening? Another hesitation. His shoulders slumped. A couple days, he admitted quietly. But it goes away on its own. Lucas. I said his name the way only grandmothers know how. Gently, but with weight. He looked away. I took his hand. We don't hide things anymore. Remember? His lower lip trembled, not with tears, but with frustration, fear, and that old instinct to protect everyone but himself. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. I didn't want to worry you, he whispered. You've been doing so much. I don't want you staying up all night again or thinking something terrible is happening every time I cough. That fear isn't because of you, I said gently. It's because of how close we came to losing you. Anyone would be afraid after that. I'm allowed to be human. He looked down at our hands, his fingers long and thin and calloused from months of gripping hospital rails. I feel like I ruined everything, he murmured. Stopped my whole life. Your whole life. Mom's trying now because she feels guilty. Marcus treats me like I'm made of glass, and I can't do anything without someone watching me. You're alive, I said, squeezing his hand. That's not ruining anything. That's giving us a reason to wake up every morning. He closed his eyes, his breath shivering in his chest. It just hurts sometimes, he admitted. Not like before, but like my lungs get tired faster than I want them to, and I don't want you to panic every time. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered, brushing his hair off his forehead. "I don't want you hiding pain just to protect my feelings. Pain grows in the dark. It gets bigger that way." His eyes opened, and in the faint glow of the street lamp, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Shame. Not because he was sick, but because he still believed he was a burden. "Lucas," I said softly, cupping his cheek, "you surviving wasn't an inconvenience. You being alive didn't interrupt my life. It saved it." His breath hitched, and for a moment I thought he might cry, but he didn't. Boys his age rarely let themselves break like that, not even after nearly dying. "Do you want to go to the ER?" I asked gently. "We can. There's no shame in it." He shook his head immediately. "It's not that bad. I just need to breathe slower. It happens when I get stressed or think too much." "So it's fear?" I asked softly. "Or pain?" He shrugged. "A little of both." I sat beside him until his breathing eased, slow and steady. His hand curled around mine, warm and trembling, as if he feared I might slip away if he let go. After a few minutes, he lay back down, and I pulled the blanket up to his chest, smoothing it the way I used to when he was little. "Grandma?" he whispered as his eyes drifted shut. "Yes, sweetheart. Don't go far." My chest tightened. "I'm not going anywhere." He exhaled softly, his breathing evening out, and within minutes, he was asleep again. I watched him for a long while, listening to the soft rise and fall of his chest, the faint whistle of air through his still healing lungs. And in that dim room, with Miami's moonlight painting silver stripes across the walls, a truth settled deep inside me. A truth I think I always knew, but never allowed myself to voice. He wasn't the only one who almost died that night. A part of me had almost died too. The part of me that believed everything was fine, that believed silence protected love, that believed self-sacrifice was the same as strength. Watching Lucas battle for breath in that ICU bed had forced something open inside me, something raw and honest and painful. Fear can make you hide. Love can make you brave. But it's truth that keeps you alive. I stood slowly, my bones protesting, and walked back toward my room. Before closing his door, I looked back one last time at his sleeping form. How strange, I thought, that the person who almost died had become the reason I wanted to live stronger. I returned to bed, but not to sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe, its soft hums, its cooling pipes, the faint rhythm of Lucas's sound machine through the wall. And I made a decision, one that would change everything, one I should have made years ago, one I wasn't afraid of anymore. Because surviving wasn't enough. We had to live. His decision didn't come to me like a flash of lightning or a dramatic revelation. It came quietly, the way dawn creeps up on the horizon before anyone notices the light changing. It came in the stillness of that night, listening to Lucas breathe through the thin wall of his room, knowing how close we had come, how close we still were, to losing him. I realized I couldn't keep living like I had been, tiptoeing through every day on shaky legs, afraid of my own heartbeat, afraid of the next phone call, afraid of being the reason he tried to protect everyone but himself. I knew I had to change something. Not him, not his illness, not the past, me. The next morning, the sun peeked through the blinds earlier than usual, the Miami light warm and golden even at 6 in the morning. I made coffee, stronger than usual, stirring it slowly, thinking. The kitchen felt quieter than it had in months, as if the house itself was holding its breath. When Lucas finally wandered out of his room around 8:30, his hair a messy halo around his head, eyes still puffy from lack of sleep, he looked so young I almost forgot he was 17. "Morning," he said, clearing his throat as if trying to hide the roughness. "Morning, sweetheart," I said, pouring him a cup before he even asked. He sat down at the table, pulling his knees up a little like he used to do as a child. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He sipped the coffee, blowing on it softly, staring into the cup as if it held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. "You feeling any better?" I asked gently. He nodded. "Yeah, just tired." "Tired as in you didn't sleep well?" I asked carefully. "Or tired as in your lungs?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then sighed. "Both, I guess," he admitted. "But I'm okay." "Really?" There it was again. That soft lie he used to protect me. the lie that nearly cost him his life. I took a seat across from him, watching the morning light paint his face. "Lucas," I said quietly, "we're going to make a plan." His eyebrows lifted. "A plan?" "Yes," I said, "for both of us." He blinked, confused. "Both of us?" "Yes, sweetheart." I reached for his hand. "You're not the only one who needs to take care of yourself." He frowned softly, and I could see the gears turning in his head, could see him observing the slight tremor in my hands, the way I'd been moving slower lately, the stiffness in my knees that I always pretended wasn't there. He saw more than I realized. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," I said gently, "that I haven't been taking care of me for a long time, and that needs to change. For you, and for me." He looked down at our hands, his thumb brushing mine. "Grandma, I don't want you to do anything because of me." "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered, smiling sadly. "I'm not doing it because of you. I'm doing it because almost losing you woke something up in me. I want to be here for as long as I can. I want to be strong enough to help you, and strong enough not to let fear guide my life anymore." He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. I don't want you to get old alone," he whispered. "I don't want you to be sick and not tell me, the way I did with you." His voice cracked on the last words. My heart squeezed so tightly it hurt. "We're done with hiding," I said firmly. "Deal?" He nodded quickly. "Deal." And just like that, the air in the room shifted, lighter somehow, clearer, like a window had finally opened after being stuck shut for years. We spent the rest of the morning talking, not in the panicked way families talk after tragedies, but slowly, honestly, rebuilding ourselves piece by piece. We talked about his treatments, his medications, the things that scared him, the things he didn't want to admit scared him. He confessed he worried about waking up in the night, unable to breathe again. He worried about going back to school and being treated differently. He worried about living a life where every step felt borrowed, fragile. And I told him the truth. I worried too. I worried constantly. But I also believed in him. I believed in us. After an hour, he leaned back in his chair and let out a breath that sounded lighter than anything I'd heard in months. "Grandma?" he asked. "Yes? Can we do something today?" he said hesitantly. "Like something normal?" I blinked. "Normal?" He nodded. "Yeah, like, I don't know. Go outside, go to the park, just something that feels like life again. Life again." 2 words that felt like sunrise. I smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." We packed light, water, inhaler, portable oxygen just in case, and drove to Margaret Pace Park, the one right along the water where the breeze carried hints of salt and sun and laughter. The Miami skyline shimmered in the distance, glass towers catching the light like mirrors to heaven. Families walked dogs, joggers moved in steady rhythm, the world looking normal in a way ours hadn't been in months. Lucas stepped onto the grass like it was sacred ground and tilted his face to the sun. "I forgot what this felt like," he whispered. "What?" I asked. "Breathing without panic," he murmured. "Just breathing." We didn't walk far, only small steps, slow and careful, but every one of them felt like a victory. He watched families play soccer, little kids run with kites, dogs barking joyfully at the waves. At one point, he stopped and pressed a hand to his chest, inhaled deeply, and smiled. "I'm alive," he murmured. "I'm really alive." I felt tears sting my eyes, but I swallowed them down and nudged his arm. "Don't go getting sentimental on me now," I teased lightly. He laughed, a soft, beautiful sound. We sat on a bench facing the water, the breeze brushing our faces, and for the first time since the ICU, the world didn't feel scary anymore. "Grandma?" he said after a long silence. "Yes, honey? Can I tell you something I didn't tell anyone?" "Of course." He didn't look at me at first. He stared out at the water, the sunlight rippling across it in golden waves. "When I was in the hospital," he said softly, "right before they put the tube in, I heard you." His voice shook. "I heard you begging me to stay. I wanted to answer you so bad. I was trying, but it felt like I was underwater, like I was drowning. And when they took my hand, I thought that was the last thing I'd ever feel." I covered my mouth, choking on a breath. "But then," he continued, "I felt you pull harder. I felt your thumb brush my fingers, and I remember thinking, if I can feel her, I'm not dead yet. Tears streamed down my cheeks, unchecked. I didn't save myself, he whispered. You saved me. I shook my head, wiping my tears. No, sweetheart, I whispered. You saved yourself. I just held on. He leaned against me then, his head resting on my shoulder, the breeze tangling his hair, the world in front of us sparkling like hope made visible. Promise me something, he murmured. Anything. Promise me we'll keep living, even on the hard days. I wrapped my arm around him, holding him close the way I did when he was small. I promise, I whispered. I promise. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it with every beat of my heart. The wind softened as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the park, stretching them like quiet reminders of everything we had survived. Lucas stayed leaning against me for a long time, the steady warmth of his body grounding me, reassuring me, reminding me that he was still here, that he had come back to us when we thought he wouldn't. When he finally lifted his head, the light caught his eyes in a way that made them glow. Not the weak, fading glow of someone fighting to stay alive, but the soft, determined glow of someone choosing to live. When we drove home, windows cracked just enough to let the warm Miami breeze through. Lucas hummed along to the oldies I played on the radio. His voice was hoarse, fragile around the edges, but it was there. And sometimes, the smallest sound can be the greatest miracle. That night, he sat at the kitchen table while I cooked dinner. Nothing fancy, just grilled chicken and rice, but it felt like a feast. He set the table slowly, taking his time, pausing between each plate, catching his breath but smiling through it. When he finally sat down and looked at me across the table, he whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I reached across and took his hand. "Thank you for fighting your way back." We ate quietly, peacefully, like two people finally learning to breathe the same air again, without fear. After dinner, he helped me clean up, moving slower than before the illness, but still moving. And when he hugged me goodnight, he held on just a little longer than usual. "I'm glad I stayed," he whispered. "So am I whispered back. He went to bed, and for once I didn't worry about the silence behind his door. I didn't lie awake waiting for a cough or a cry or the sound of him struggling to breathe. Instead, I let the quiet settle over the house like a soft blanket. I sat on the couch, closed my eyes, and felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the fragile kind that shatters if you breathe too hard. The real kind. The earned kind. The kind you only find after walking through fire and realizing you're stronger than you thought. The next morning, I watched Lucas step outside onto the porch, stretching slowly, letting the early sunlight warm his face. He waved at me through the window, that crooked half-smile of his blooming like spring after a long winter. And I realized then that life had given us a second chance. Not a perfect life, not a painless one, but a life worth living, a life worth fighting for, a life worth sharing, one breath at a time. And if there's one thing this whole journey taught me, it's this. Sometimes the people we love most hide their pain because they think it protects us. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help, and sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in silence. But you don't win any of them alone. Lucas didn't. I didn't. And you don't have to either. If you're listening to this story right now, wherever you are in the world, I want you to take one thing with you. Don't wait until life forces you to see what really matters. Talk to the people you love. Check on them. Let them check on you. Carry nothing alone that you wouldn't want your family to hide from you. And if this story touched your heart even a little, stay with us. Because there are so many real stories like this. Stories of resilience, heartbreak, hope, and the fragile beauty of family. And here, on this channel, we tell every single one of them with all the heart they deserve. So before you go, please remember, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from, turn on notifications so you never miss another true story. Your support means the world, not just to me, but to every person who finds comfort, healing, and connection through stories like these. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling this with me. And wherever you are tonight, hold your loved ones a little closer.